here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is self-aggrandizement and self-esteem. And what we're really going to be looking at is some of the ways that low self-esteem plays out in behavior. And we're also going to talk about the fact that today is a big conjunction, an astrological event that I think is really interesting. Whether you believe in astrology or not, I think it'll be interesting to take a look at. Good morning, Irma. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you here, and welcome to everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you today. So before we get started, let's take a minute to settle in. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen just coursing into your lungs and your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and your organs and bringing vital life force. And as you exhale, exhale any stress or any tension. And now let's just take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright, sparkling light just lighting you up, every molecule, every electron, electrifying, energizing, and bringing life energy all throughout your body and being and beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining stress and tension. And now let's just gently press our palms together, really softly and slowly. Rub your fingers against your palms and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, in your body, in this, the experience of being in this physical form. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Andrea. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. Lots of welcomes this morning. So we're going to talk about self-esteem. And it's really interesting to notice how self-esteem shows up. It doesn't, a lack of self-esteem, it doesn't necessarily always show up as beating yourself up or feeling like you're less than other people or less than what you want to be. Sometimes it shows up as judging others as less than, so that we can pump ourselves up. Sometimes we look down at others, we judge others. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So glad to have you guys here. It's a party today. So yeah, so with self-esteem, sometimes through our insecurities, we become hypercritical of others, see ourselves better, see ourselves as superior, see ourselves as uh, more knowledgeable, more evolved, more intelligent, more whatever than other people. And what's driving that is a sense of insecurity oftentimes. And it's a way that we are essentially trying to compensate for our low self-esteem by having to give ourselves positive comparisons to others. And another way that we often compensate for our lack of self-esteem is by having to be right and to prove that we're right, to prove that we know better than somebody else, to get into endless debate and argument to try to win, or we take a stance of separation and winning in relation to others. And it's very interesting. Over the weekend, I had occasion to do a session with someone where they were telling me about how they had this experience with a bunch of other people and walked away feeling smug. That was their word, actually, feeling smug, like they had so much more life experience and they had so much more awareness, and they these people that they had engaged with were not as refined or cultured or whatever. And it was very interesting because initially this person, sounded really smug, and through our conversation, what became really apparent was that they had a very low sense of self-esteem and a high sense of insecurity. And so it's interesting the way that we can, the opposite dynamic happens too, where we consider other people as being so much better, so much more evolved, so much more intelligent, so much more attractive, whatever, than we are. And that's kind of the opposite dynamic here, but it's all driven by the same uh, underlying issue. And it's interesting that we can use comparison, whether we compare ourselves positively or negatively, to try to um, find a place of deeper assurance within ourselves, and to relate or to um, enact this experience of low self-esteem. So I'm wondering what you notice perhaps about yourself. Here's another instance where a person was talking about needing to be special. And this came in response to a conversation about being ordinary. And the notion of being ordinary was a tremendous trigger for this person who felt like that it was really important for them as an identity to be special, to stand out. And I think the word ordinary itself had its own charge to it, because ordinary is associated with the word average. And the way that this person was able to sort of metabolize that idea was that everybody's special, that they didn't have to be extraordinary compared to others because others were also extraordinary, but it was important not to be ordinary. And so, because so many of us have a pejorative definition or association with the word ordinary, is like mainstream, normal, average. Average probably is the association with the word ordinary. And I wonder, what was really interesting is that for this person, this need to be extraordinary also stemmed from a lack of security, of a feeling of insecurity, and that's why they needed to be special. And so when we feel insecure, we often have the need to puff ourselves up, and rather than to just be able to be present and whole, present to our inner experience. And what we can recognize is that these moments where we feel like we have to puff ourselves up um, is that we're feeling threatened in some way or another. And the puffing ourselves up, it's a defense, and the self-aggrandizement is a defense. And so good morning, Julie, welcome, great to have you here. And we're talking about self-aggrandizement and lack of self-esteem or insecurity, and how our insecurities manifest with all different kinds of behaviors. So you may know someone in your life, perhaps intimately, or not, who has these behaviors of self-aggrandizement. And it looks like they're really egocentric, or they're really self-centered or boastful or whatever. And the thing about people who are exhibit those behaviors is you can guess that the likelihood is that there's some deep underlying insecurity, which they are perhaps blinding themselves to because it's too painful. And so underlying those boastful behaviors and the assertion of having always to be right, um, is a way that they can protect themselves from having to look at their deeper feelings. And so if we notice these things in ourselves, these behaviors, and also the behavior of comparing ourselves disfavorably or unfavorably to others, we get to see that there's a part of us that's calling for compassion and nurturing and healing and love and appreciation and acceptance and forgiveness sometimes. And so these behaviors are signals that there's something going on underneath. And it's really interesting. My dad was a really, really bright man, and an icon for so many people. And he was one of these people that had to be right always. And I learned that. And it was a behavior that I exhibited for years and years. And every now and then I fall back into, this having to be right kind of thing every now and then. Because if I am not right, or I being the general, all of us kind of, the inclination is to believe that there's something wrong with me. So interesting. Um, I am I am witnessing this behavioral pattern in my family. I see it as it is not just a pattern of self-esteem, but it's a behavioral pattern too, is defending to be right, because there's an association of that rightness with my value, with my personal value. And I'm wondering if you're finding for yourself that any of these behaviors, are you recognizing any of these behaviors in yourself? Because if you do, what it's a call for is to recognize, oh, wow, there's a part of me that must be feeling pretty insecure to be having to engage this way. And I was so pleased to recently see that I, so in my family, it was always asserting your own opinion, and being right and proving your point, and making a case and all of this stuff. It was very sort of confrontational rather than conversational. So we're moving slowly but surely, a little bit by little bit, in that direction as a family. But I see the behavior in my younger relatives as well. And it's a trap that's easy to fall into, where you get triggered to do the same old behavior over and over. And there was a conversation where I was offering a resource to a family member, and they just came back and just lambasted this resource and just essentially said no way, and this is what this is, and it's a pyramid scheme kind of thing, or whatever it was. They gave me all this feedback that was based on some research that they did very, very superficially online, and didn't bother to ask about why I was offering that, or what my experience around it was, or what my awareness was. They just came back with their knowing. And in the past, I would have gotten mired in a debate about it. And I was so delighted to recognize, wow, I just let it go. I just said, what, if you think so. And it was really cool to see that it's possible to get beyond these deeply ingrained patterns that so many of us have, whether it is about being right. And when we recognize that oftentimes being right costs us a relationship, and be this sense of being better and talking down to somebody, is something that can cost a relationship. And it's not necessary, right? If we're secure within ourselves, we don't need to resort to that kind of behavior. We can just say, okay, you're entitled to your opinion. That's okay. And to allow that person to be where they are. And if there's a resource to present to them that they care to take advantage of, great. And if they don't choose to take advantage of it, great. That's up to them. You can only share so much with somebody that knows everything. And that's what the case was with this relative, is that they come from this place of deep insecurity and needing to know and assert this righteousness and this rightness, plus it's a learned behavior for them. So it was awesome to recognize, wow, I didn't get caught in that trap, because we can all get triggered. And so as we recognize these behaviors in ourselves, we get to go and heal that wounded child, heal that part of ourselves that is feeling threatened by somebody else's opinion or somebody else's perspective, or just somebody else's being. We have occasions where there's somebody that we perceive, and they seem to have it all. They seem to have all the things, all the attributes that we value, and we compare ourselves to them. And maybe in some instances we decide that we don't like them because they are all that, like because there's a jealousy, essentially, right? So we experience this jealousy and then project it forward. And what's that about? That jealousy, and then the dislike, and then perhaps behavior that acts on that. What is all that about? It's about insecurity. So when we recognize these behaviors in ourselves, what we get to do is go deeper. Let's heal ourselves. Let's take better care of our wounded child or our wounded self, and not just be bolstering our ego, but healing the wounds. And that's where we can see all these behaviors when we are oppositional. It's an indicator that there's a wound. And that doesn't mean when we stand up for what we believe in. There's a distinction I'd like to make between standing up for what we believe in and being oppositional. Because being oppositional is creating resistance. It's creating an us and them kind of dynamic. And when we stand up for what we believe, we can stand in that place of receptivity. And I'm thinking of kind of like a willow tree. As I experience it, is kind of, it is able to respond. It's able to ebb and flow with the requirements of the moment. And so we can stand for what we believe in without having to be rigid and without having to be oppositional. And when we're solid in what we're standing for, when we know what we know, when we're really present to it, we can actually have open-hearted conversation. We can actually engage rather than confront. And these are all distinctions that are a reflection to a great degree about our experience of security versus threat. So I'm hoping that makes sense. I'm not seeing whether this connects for you or not. Maybe you could chime in and let me know if any of this resonates for you. You may see these behaviors in yourself. You may see these behaviors in others. And what those behaviors are is really a call for compassion. So thank you, Julie. I appreciate the response. And so I want to take this moment because today is December 21st of 2020. It is the shortest day of the year. And it also is a really cool conjunction of planets that happens once every 20 years, plus there's some other big conjunctions that are part of it. So Irma says, there's so much in here for me. I'm trying to digest it. Well, I'm delighted that you're finding that there's a lot packed in there for you, Irma. I think there is a lot available for us. And Dido says, when I feel challenged or even triggered by someone else, I try to remind myself of that saying that is something like, this is a cry for love, as in there is only love and a cry for love, from A Course in Miracles. Beautiful, Dido. That's exactly what it is. So when we see behavior from others that is the behaviors that we've described, it's a cry for help and healing and love. Exactly. You know, it is an explanation or a announcement that there's a deep wound. And Julie says, I understand better now why my sister acts the way she does. Yeah, Julie, exactly. And I wonder if in those moments, if you can conjure within yourself a place to say, you know what, I love you, or I think you're awesome, or, I mean, that might be really extreme. I don't know if it's doable, but, you know, or to just connect yourself. That Julie says, I need to send more love. Yeah. Yeah. To connect to those expressions are an expression of woundedness. And like Dido said, there's only love and a cry for love, from A Course in Miracles. That's exactly where we are. So yeah, being present to that, you know, being present to where we get triggered ourselves. And, you know, because that behavior from someone else can feel like a threat. Me too, says Irma, and I'm fighting it, fighting giving more love. Yeah, well, you know what? The first place to give more love is to yourself. And so as you give more love to yourself, there's more love for others. Love is the only thing we give that when we give it, we get more of, whether it's to ourselves or to others. So that's where you can allow yourself to engage, Irma, is just really give you more love, more and more and more love. And rather than making yourself wrong or bad for fighting the giving love to others at the moment, you know, fill yourself up. And anyway, so if you guys are interested, I'd love to share this thing about this conjunction because it's super, super hopeful. So a conjunction is when two or more planets can line up with each other. And apparently there's a bunch of conjunctions happening right now, but a really big one that's happening, and a really big one that's happening, is between Jupiter and Saturn. And they're both associated with authority, but they each act differently. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this, and this is not the definitive take on any of it, but it's interesting to be aware of this and to just look at how it might play out in your life. Not that it has to, not that it's definitive, but it's interesting to be aware of. So Dido says, love is the only thing that when we give it, we get more of. Yes. Yes, that is true. It's true. By giving love, we experience love. What a gift, right? So anyway, so Jupiter is a generous leader who's associated with health, wealth, and having a good time, while Saturn favors strict responsibility and setting limits. When they have to collaborate, you can expect power struggles over the best way to rule. So I just think this has so much to do with what's going on right now in the world. On the macro level, it's likely to bring about a cultural moment when things change irrevocably, whether we're ready or not. Politics shift toward the progressive and away from calcified ideas that have outlived their usefulness. It's a changing of the guard, so to speak. It says it's no surprise that great conjunctions tend to, this is called a great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, tend to correspond roughly to American election years, which always signal change on both a national and a global scale. We can already see how that's happening with the new president and vice president that are going to be coming into office. So what makes this great conjunction different? And here's interesting stuff. This conjunction is special because it's in Aquarius, the sign of social change, humanitarian efforts, and justice for all. And we've had a preview of Saturn in Aquarius this year, from March to July. And let's see, when the Black Lives Matter movement really became a big influence in the awareness in our country. I am summarizing this. So Aquarius is, let's see, is also associated with LGBTQIA plus people, because it's very open, progressive, transformationally oriented. And let's see, the Great Conjunction is also happening at 0 degrees, which signifies a completely new beginning. This means that as a society, we get to start from scratch and rethink our approach to freedom, equality, and what it means to care for the common good. So all of that, I think, is really, really very cool. And the other thing is that it's happening today on the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. And the solstices are kind of transition points in the natural cycle. And with the Great Conjunction, the winter solstice happening at the same time, it's an amplification of both. So here's how we can use it to our advantage. A great conjunction represents a time for you to release old habits in order to make way for new ways of doing things. And with COVID, we have been called to new ways of doing things and to looking at our lives and looking at new ways of doing things. So if you aren't open to change, it can feel uncomfortable. But if you are, you can make incredible progress toward dreams you've held on to for a long time. The expansive nature of Jupiter and structure of Saturn team up to help you accomplish something that may have felt like a reach before, but now is totally within your grasp. So for best results, choose a big juicy goal that's been calling to you for a while and spend as much time as you can in 2021 working toward it. Since Jupiter and Saturn both have to do with professional achievements, this is great energy to channel toward career success. Whatever you decide to pursue will have Jupiter's accelerating force to kickstart growth in that area, plus the solid foundation of Saturn to ensure your results are long lasting. It's the kind of win your friends want to buy you champagne to celebrate, and it has staying power. So let's see. There's a suggestion if you want to celebrate, you can light a purple candle to celebrate and amplify the impact of these wonderful, of this conjunction. And so the Great Conjunction will affect Aquarius people most intensely, but other air signs will get an added boost from that as well. And so I just thought it was a really hopeful message to be looking at how we need change in the world. We need something transformational to happen. We have been moving toward that with the growing awareness and awakening and around COVID, around social issues, social justice issues. And so it's interesting to see that there seems to be a correlation with these evolutions and changes in the planets and stars. So um, I'm not an astrologer. I take astrology with a grain of salt, but I find it fascinating when there are these indicators that have such an apparent correlation with our lives. So maybe one of the things, to wrap this back around to the self-esteem issue, maybe one of the things that we can intend for ourselves through 2020 is that we allow ourselves to grow into wholeness and a place of balance. And that's the ultimate place of self-acceptance, self-love, and self-esteem, where we don't feel the need to puff ourselves up because we can allow ourselves to be exactly as we are, and we can be ordinary people, all of us being ordinary and extraordinary all at the same time, that we can allow ourselves the freedom to live our lives and not have to do or be anything more than we are in order to be perfect in our humanity and in our perfectly imperfect um, existence. And uh, through that acceptance, we can then allow ourselves the freedom to pursue our dreams, because that's the core of our inspiration, and not because we have to prove anything to anybody outside of ourselves, and that we don't have to prove ourselves at all, that we get to follow our joy, our dreams, our passions. And you're so welcome, Julie. It's and Andrea too. I'm so glad that you guys were here to join us this morning. It was really, it's always awesome sharing this time with you. And I just want to say thank you. I have such deep appreciation for this time that we spend together, and for you and your insights and your commitment to your own growth and evolution. And together we can really make a huge impact in the world. You know, as we heal the planet. So with lots and lots and love to you, lots and lots of love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I encourage you to check out the other awesome programming on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And until next time, lots of love.